So today, I did send out a notice, but it's a little different. I won't be giving the Dharma talk. Dani Hall will, and she'll be giving a very specific kind of talk that we call mind-seeking way talk. And over the years, different members have offered these talks. So let me explain a little bit what this is about. This is not a traditional Dharma talk about a Dharma subject, a Buddhist subject or meditation subject. This is much more personal. The mind-seeking way is a kind of Zen expression, and here the word way really means like the Tao, the truth, liberation, enlightenment. So it really has to do with, in a formal sense, when someone's spiritual life has matured to the point that they really want to be free of suffering. They really want to know who and what they really are. So that's when they seek the way. And many of you have been on kind of formal spiritual searches, looking for something different in your life. But this talk will acknowledge that, I'm sure, but really we use it in a different way to show that this mind that seeks the way, the mind that seeks freedom, the mind that seeks an end to one's personal suffering, a mind that seeks the end of the suffering of the world, the mind that wants to know itself as it is, it doesn't simply show up and then you find a center or a teacher or something. That often this mind has been with us from early on. We didn't have a name for it. We may not have attended to it. But if we often look back at our lives, we go, yeah, there was something else going on inside me that didn't seem to have an antecedent in perhaps the family I was raised in, or what was going on in school, or what was going on in the neighborhood. It was something very personal that was within me. And that, again, for some of us, it may have been a very distant voice. Some of it might have been a voice that we heard fairly clearly. Some of us may have listened to the voice. Some of us may not have listened to the voice. But it was often there. It's sort of like for many of us, as we go through our normal life, doing the normal things that Americans do, there's also a sense that there's something different inside me, some different kind of sensibility or something that's calling me. So we call that the mind-seeking way talk. And so, again, ask different members. I think the last, Dion, you gave the last one a couple of months ago? That's right, yeah. So it's interesting, Dion Hall and Dani Hall, but no relation, right? Yeah, so Dani's been a member here for 5 years. She does chanting for us. She's very involved in the garden. She's got a very good sense of plants. She helps us with self-service. She's led nature walks. She's done a lot of different things in our community over her 5 years. But also, one of the reasons I asked Dani, because I know that in the 5 years she's been here, significant change and transformations has occurred in her life. And I also know sort of where she came from. And so I think her talk will be especially meaningful because many of us whether you're a part of this community or a part of a spiritual community or searching, we often have two kind of doubts, two kind of skepticisms. One is we doubt the efficacy of the path, right? Does this path really work? So that's one kind of doubt, which many of us have, which prevents us from committing or stepping forward. But the other doubt, which is even worse, is we doubt our own capacity. We think that somehow maybe others, great spiritual Olympic stars, they can become transformed or free themselves from their past conditioning, but not me. And we have lots of reasons why we think not me. I won't go into it. So with that, let me introduce Dani. Just also say she's a wife, she's a mother. She's got the full, as we say, the full catastrophe of householder life. Thank you, everyone.
Well, this is a different perspective. Beautiful Sangha. Dear teacher, dear Thai, dear Buddha, dear Dharma. Hopefully I won't fight with this thing the whole time. Technology and I are not always the best of friends. So, to provide some context for my spiritual journey, I'll have to go a little bit into my causes and conditions. Spirituality was not... I was very drawn to spirituality from a very, very young, early age. I have memories from when I was a toddler. Not a lot of people do, but I do. And I just remember being very, very drawn to it. My parents were not religious at all, not even a little. They would go to church midnight mass, Easter. My grandmother called them emergency room Christians. I don't really know what she meant by that, but yeah, that's what. My grandmother, though, on my dad's side, was a very devout Catholic, and that was my very, very first influence, was my grandmother on my dad's side. I never met anybody who loved the Pope more. She had more pictures of the Pope around. She thought the Pope was dope. She did. She absolutely just, he could do no wrong in her eyes. I'd be interested to know how she felt about our newest Pope and how progressive he's become. But no, she was a gigantic influence on me, and there was just something, and it was very present for me. It was loud, and we grew up very poor. I grew up ridiculously poor, as a matter of fact. My dad was a long-haul truck driver after he got out of the military, and my mom worked in food service. And we were really, really poor. My parents actually got divorced when I was in kindergarten, and there were 6 of us. I had 6 siblings at that time. 4 of us at home until I was about 6 or 7, and my older sister ran away from home to get married at 15. And so at 6 or 7, I was charged with taking care of my 2 younger sisters. My mom worked 60, 70 hours a week, so did my dad. My dad was just gone. My dad was gone, on the road. So I was it. I raised my baby sisters from the time I was like 7 until I was 15 when I got out of there. So my mom, my poor sweet mother, she had a lot. I don't know specifically what her upbringing, background. She didn't really talk a lot about that kind of stuff. And she wasn't, I knew she had a contentious relationship with God. Like anything bad happened, it was like, why, God, why? Like she'd rail at the sky. She was kind of one of those. She always had a contentious relationship with God, but she did believe in God. But she could be my mom, she was tough. She wasn't very affectionate. She was uber critical. And of course, I just wanted to do nothing but please my mom growing up. Yeah, and suffering tends to attract suffering. So when my parents got divorced not too long after that, she met my stepdad. And my stepdad was fresh out of prison. And come to find out, he was a pretty heavy alcoholic and a drug addict. Crack and meth were his two poisons of choice. And so that's the life that I lived for my entire childhood, was a life of drug addicts. And I lived in little places like the Swan. Next door, I lived in quite a few places just like that. We were homeless a lot. We lived in our car. We also lived in trailer parks. I lived in the ghetto, a little shack out in the middle of nowhere. I preferred the shack out in the middle of nowhere. So that was a big part of my life. I was hungry a lot when I was a kid. If it hadn't been for like school lunch, school breakfast, and the generosity of the church, spiritual communities, I don't know when I would have eaten. My mom put a padlock on our refrigerator at one point in time so that when she went off to work, I was at home taking care of the kids, that we wouldn't actually eat all the food. We were little, right? So that was definitely had a lot of influence on me and throughout my life. And even now when we do mindful eating, it's very powerful for me. It really, really is, because I know what it's like to not have to, I know what it's like to be profoundly hungry as a little kid, like, am I gonna have another meal kind of hungry? So mindful eating is, it's a very powerful and wonderful practice for me. So I hardly spoke when I was little. I was, for one reason or another, whether it was trauma in the situation or they're not sure, but I just didn't have a lot to say. I was very quiet. I was ridiculously shy. I could literally go weeks without saying anything at all. I would sing to myself. I would hum to myself a lot when I was a kid, but I really didn't speak very much. And that was tough. That was tough for my mom. It really, really was. It's difficult. It's much more difficult for the people around you when you don't speak than it is for you. It was peaceful and quiet and wonderful for me, but for the people around me, not so much. But it also made me pray to certain people in our life. We lived a certain way, and so I was pray to what I call sea pirates. If you're familiar with Ty's story, Call Me by My True Names. There were a lot of sea pirates in my life from the time I was 2 years old up until I was 15. So that was a lot. Probably another reason why I didn't speak very much. But that poem, I couldn't read it. I couldn't read it in the beginning. I read it, but it was. I even had a few interviews with Fred where I'm like, I don't know that I can leap that hurdle, teacher, but ultimately now it's a wonderful, beautiful, profound teaching, and I highly recommend Ty's poem, Call Me by My True Names, because it's true. It truly is. So that poem was very, very powerful for me. I loved church. I loved church as a kid. I was the odd kid who really, really just loved being in church, around church. I just felt so drawn, and I had an experience when I was 2 years old. Something really horrific was happening to me at the time, and I remember very vividly. But I also remember this presence, peace. I still to this day cannot really articulate it super clearly, but something happened to me, and there was just this peace, and there was love in that peace as this was going on. At the time, it was Jesus. That's what I called it, and that's what I called it throughout my whole childhood. And from that experience, I started chasing Jesus, literally. Like, I kept trying to get to wherever that peaceful place was, but now I know at that time, sitting here now, it was me. It was the essential, true me, not the constructed Dani, but me, protecting myself. So that just kind of stuck with me. And so I went to church whenever I could, because I think I was looking for that again. I was searching for that. So there was, I grew up mostly Catholic, but we grew up in some very rural places where Catholicism wasn't a thing. It was Baptist, y'all. It was lots of Baptist folks. So there was this little Baptist church in the town I grew up in South Georgia, and there was this little bus that would come around and pick up all the underprivileged kids and take them. I always got on that bus. every time it came around, I got on that bus. I mean, it could have been for the snacks, I mean, it could very well have been for the snacks they gave us, but I went to Vacation Bible School. I went to Awana, which is a big deal in the Baptist church, and I just loved it. I'm one of the very first, I remember the first verse I memorized out of the Bible was John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. I mean, that was just super profound for me. I loved Jesus. I did. I loved Jesus when I was a kid. So my family, though, not so much. I mean, they supported me going to church, but they were like, I don't really get this kid at all. I really don't, So I would bring all this stuff home, and I want to talk about it. And so, yeah, they just... they didn't get it. And I always felt polar opposite to everybody around me. I always felt so different. I dressed different. I've always been kind of an odd dresser. I was that little kid in kindergarten who just wanted to wear the 2 different color socks and the fluorescent pink and the green and all the crazy colors. And so that was always just kind of me. And my mom swore that if you could pick out the ugliest pair of shoes in the store, Dani would love them. So, yeah, that was just me. And I didn't have the same interest that anybody else around me had. I just wanted to be outside in nature, and with the plants. And like I said, I didn't speak. So I just always felt so very odd. So I spent a lot of time on my own, and I spent a lot of time in nature. And thank goodness, every place we ever lived in, I found a green space that I could go to and be in. And I would just speak to God. I would talk to God, talk to myself, sing to God, sing to myself. So, I did that a lot. I did. So we moved here, St. Pete, when I was in high school. And I found St. Jude Catholic Church down there, a huge Catholic church. But I did find a way to get plugged in. I did a lot of volunteering there, even as a teenager. I became their youth choir leader, as a matter of fact. And even prior to that, so I volunteered in nursing homes when I was like 14. When I started when I was 14. I loved elders. There was something about being around elders. And some of the people at the manor in Bainbridge in South Georgia, where I grew up, some of the older ladies that I spoke to, some of them were like in their mid-90s. They've been around since slavery was a thing, and they could talk about it, and it was so fascinating. I could sit there and listen to them for hours. So that was like my first experience of like deep listening before I even knew, what deep listening was. But I think I was looking for a guide. I was looking for somebody to kind of show me the way, somebody who had experience in the work, because I unfortunately wasn't getting that at home. My parents just weren't parents. They had a lot on their plate. They had to work and, put food on the table. So I raised myself and I raised my sisters in that way. So I think I was just looking for some guidance. And I was a very troubled teen. My teachers would not have recognized Dani outside of school, to be honest, because in school, Dani was the perfect student. I was honor roll, principal's list. I was in the International Baccalaureate program. I got very, very, very good grades. Outside of school, I drank like a fish. I drank and drank and drank. I almost put myself in the hospital 2 times from alcohol poisoning. I smoked an excessive amount of pot, cannabis, ganja. Oh, Dani loved pot when she was in high school. I was trying to numb my pain. I wrecked my best friend's car. I hung out with people I shouldn't have. I probably should have ended up in juvenile detention hall, but I didn't. I had wonderful people around me who just kind of kept me on the right track. So, I also explored a lot of religions back then, and I became a little bit disenchanted with Christianity and Catholicism and all the rules and the hell and damnation and that. So I started looking elsewhere, and I did look into Buddhism, but it was Zen, and I was like 15 or 16, and it was like, there's no God? What? How can there not be a God? So it was so high level and intimidating, and I didn't delve deep enough into it. And Wicca, yeah, I thought I could be a witch. So I tried that hat on. I even went to like a bonfire gathering that they all had, and scary. And I was like, okay, now we're going into Satan. And from my Catholic upbringing, I was like, oh boy, I'm going to hell because I'm hanging around with a bunch of demon worshipers, at the Wiccan gatherings. So I even looked into Hinduism and Jainism. Jainism very much spoke to me. But ultimately, I stuck with Christianity because this is what I knew. It was what I knew. And so Yeah, and the church was very good to me at the times. But when I was 15, I met my last pirate. I had a very violent encounter, and my family did not respond in the most skillful way, and so I was done. I was done living the life that my family was living, and my boss helped me. I moved out when I was 15, got my own place, got promoted in my job. My boss was a lovely, lovely man, and he saw my suffering, saw what I was dealing with, and he helped me. And so I moved out. My family was very upset. They were, but they never really understood me. They thought I was snobby and too good for them or better than they were. And, this was my way of expressing it. Oh, Dani's just, But I just couldn't live like that anymore. They were living at the time, they were living in a little, like an efficiency motel like the Swan in St. Pete. And I just couldn't do that anymore. So I got out. I did. And like I said, I just couldn't take one more step the way they were taking it. And I always felt that way. I'd always felt that way. For my whole, I was so involved. I got involved in choir. I got involved in whatever I could at school that would take me out of whatever was going on at home and that. So it just felt like I was always drawn to do better, be better, get, just have better circumstances. But like I said, my family didn't see it that way, sadly. I love that bell so much. That was one of the very first things that drew me to this practice was the bell. It's just such a beautiful practice to have. So I made it into my adult years, not addicted to anything. I wasn't a prostitute. I wasn't a drug dealer. I'd never been to jail up until that point. So I thought I was pretty successful. I truly did. I mean, it's kind of sad to say, but at the time, that was like, it was a huge deal. And sitting here now, I still feel like it's a bit of a miracle that I came out of, when I came out of, with the heart that I have. But this heart's always, I still have the heart of that 2-year-old little girl who just loved Jesus so much. So fast forward, and I met my best friend who's up there on AV today. And he saved me in so many ways. He taught me how to be an adult, helped raise me a little bit. So we have 2 biological boys, and then we took in our Bradleykins, a child of our hearts. So we have 3 boys, technically speaking. And then fast forward into my late 20s, and I had to have 4 back surgeries. So I was born with a lifelong condition, birth defect in my spine, lower spine and hip area, and so I had to have 4 back surgeries. And then it just didn't go so well. So I couldn't walk after my surgeries at all, and Brent had to really step up and take care of me, take care of our kids. I mean, the man bathed me, for heaven's sakes. I mean, it was like full-blown caretaking. And I was on 14 or 15 different medications. I was on a lot of drugs, a lot of stuff. I was still in a tremendous amount of pain, but, on a cocktail of things that were not helping, unfortunately, and actually making me worse. My quality of life was pretty poor, pretty low at the time. So I just got to a point where I couldn't do that anymore, and I said, well, I'm done. The pain management doctors wanted to just provide, they wanted to do more invasive stuff, and I just knew that I wasn't going to get any better if I took that route. So I went against all of their advice, completely detoxed off of all of my medication, and discovered yoga and meditation. So yoga saved my physical body. Absolutely it did. I loved yoga so much. I just took to it so naturally. I started studying Ashtanga Vinyasa for the yogis in the room who understand. And it just became a beautiful part of my life, and I still do it to this day. Meditation, though, in the beginning, I started doing it as part of my yoga practice, but it was very shallow. It was very surface level. It was, I'd sit on the cushion and it would be like, oh, this is so nice. My mind's finally quiet because I had a monkey mind like you wouldn't believe. It was all over the place. It was, it was like a little toddler running around where I was like, oh gosh, she's into this. Oh gosh, she's over there. So that was my mind. And so if I could just get it to just sit on its cushion. Can you just sit there just for 2 minutes? That was me with my mind. Can you just sit so I can get a break for 2 minutes? Thank you. I mean, that was my meditation, be like, oh, there she goes again. Can you just sit? Can you please? So that was like, okay, forget it. We're just, this is just gonna, not working. So that was kind of my meditation. And sometimes we'd be like, oh, this is so, I'd get almost blissed out. I'd be like, wow, this is nice. Okay, and then you go, and then it's like little birds flying off. It's like whatever peace and calm and niceness that you happen to get in that meditation just flew off like little birds. So that was my meditation for a really long time until I discovered FCM. So fast forward to pre-COVID, and I'm an ecologist, environmental activist. I've been working to try to create positive change since I was in high school, really, since I became an activist when I was 15. And the pandemic happened, and I lost 3 members of my family right away, within a month's time frame. That hit me very hard. Hit me very, very hard. And these weren't even family that I was super duper close to. It was just a matter of 3 people that I was related to and connected with just gone. And I obviously had not been very in touch with my impermanence or the impermanence of anybody around me. So it just, it hit me. It hit me very hard. And then the UN came out with their biodiversity report that we had lost 2/3 of all wildlife worldwide. And that number was escalating rapidly. And in the United States, we've lost billions. Cornell came out with a study that we've lost billions of birds in 50 years in this country alone. And my research, as an ecologist, pointed to not good times coming ahead. So I crashed. I felt like, what have I been doing all my life? What have been, I felt completely ineffective as an activist. I felt completely ineffective as a scientist. I lost my faith in God. I started questioning everything. What am I? Is there a God? What is consciousness? What the hell is awareness? So I really started questioning, and the deeper I looked, the more afraid I got, actually. So it's like, okay, let's rein it in. So I had all these big existential questions, and it just so happens that Brent and I were in Dunedin, just kind of walking around one evening prior to the pandemic. And we go into my favorite little bookshop there, back in the day, books in Dunedin, and I just happened to see on the shelf a tiny little book, and I wish I had remembered to bring it with me, but it's Ty's book. It's called How to Fight. It's a tiny little book. It's got boxing gloves on the front of it. And honestly, it was the boxing gloves that drew me, because I've done martial arts my whole adult life. Being a victim as a child, I swore no one would ever touch me ever again like that. And so I learned combat self-defense, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, all that type of thing. So those boxing gloves, I was like, how to fight, huh? I need to know how to fight. Because this mind right here is just, that's what drew me to it. And when I opened it up, it was the absolute complete opposite. But that book changed, it just changed everything for me. I couldn't even pronounce Ty's name. I was like, who's this guy? So I started researching him, and I had never heard anyone living anyway, talk the way that Ty did. No one. Thich Nhat Hanh, for those of you who don't know, I apologize. He's the leader of our Plum Village, and he's passed now. But Thich Nhat Hanh, I never knew that I could love someone so much that I had never met before. And that's what developed for me, just this unbelievable, profound, deep love for him. And it just, everything he said spoke to me very, very deeply. Everything he said, it was like, yes. It was like all of a sudden, all of these just yeses just started coming out. And so I started looking. I was desperate for what Ty had to offer. And so I started desperately looking for a place to learn, to be. And I couldn't believe it. We have one right here in our area. And there's this old white dude leading it, though, so I had issues. I'm gonna be honest with you, I had issues up until that point with old white dudes in my life, from priests to Baptist ministers to you name it. So, yeah. But I had Marilyn as my mentor at first, so that was amazing. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, my dear sweet Marilyn. And like I said, I had trust issues. I came to one of the intro to mindfulness little, like Fred talked about that we have here. I came to one of those in the very beginning. And I'd been through the ringer. So I asked, it was led by Dave and my sweet friend Nancy. And I asked them point blank, I probably put them on the spot a little. And I was like, is this a safe place? Is this a safe community? And they assured me that it absolutely 100% was. And they were right. And so I took a leap and decided to trust them. And after that, that was it for me. And once I'm determined about something, you can ask Brent, I'm a little scary at times. It happens, and I don't turn my back. That's it. That's all there is. As he says, I'm 150 miles or off the cliff, so there's no... Just look at my gardens to know that's actual fact. So I took the 5 mindfulness trainings and now have the aspiration to take the 14 mindfulness trainings. All these practices point us towards the same thing, and they really flow into each other for me. But if I had to narrow down practices that were profoundly helpful for me in the beginning, it would be equanimity, which is a big $5 word, and metta, loving kindness. I was very reactive mind, activist for almost 30 years. So very reactive, very monkey, very all over the place. So plus I deal with a lot of chronic pain. So equanimity, just non-reactivity, non-attachment. That was profoundly helpful for me in my practice. Being kind to myself, that never occurred to me before. Being kind to myself. Never occurred to me. I was my worst critic. All the stuff from my childhood, it wasn't bad enough that I had it as a kid. I did it to myself my entire adult life. Not good enough. Never good enough. So that all changed and turned around when I developed the metta practice. And now I love myself in a healthy way. It's important. I completely changed the dialogue that I have with myself, and it was all through metta meditation. And I've also changed the relationship that I have with my body, my physical body, because it used to be very contentious. Now it's wonderful. It's a loving, peaceful, accepting relationship, even when there's all of the physical discomfort. Because why would I want to live anywhere else, right? Why would I want to live in misery and suffering and contention? I don't, so I'm not. And it's just that black and white for me. So I also had a lot of fear and anxiety, I had a very upheaved childhood, so I didn't trust. But through this practice, that's all gone. It's all gone. And I mean that. I don't have fear of death like I used to. I don't have the day-to-day fears. I just don't. It just doesn't make any sense. So once I saw my thoughts for what they were, once I saw my mind for what it truly was, all that stuff just kind of dissolved away. And Fred's very good at pulling that stuff out of you. Very good, if you allow him. So the interconnected nature of nature that I was always very in touch with and tapped into as a kid, it's not just confined to nature anymore. It's not just confined to nature, it's everyone and everything. That's a beautiful place to sit. So it's helped me to realize this practice that everything I've been searching for has always been right here. Always. It's always been right here. I feel like we're searching for something out, or we're searching for some grand experience, but I'm here to tell you that it is the most extraordinary yet ordinary. Extraordinary yet ordinary. I'm no longer afflicted by my mind because I just have a different relationship with it. And I don't harbor, this is hard for people, but I don't harbor any ill will, negativity, hard feelings whatsoever for anyone that had anything to do with my childhood at all. Not even a little. Not even a little. I feel for their suffering. I feel for the suffering that was involved that would cause a person to hurt a child in that way. I feel for the suffering, not the person. And now my faith and practice are solid, stable, and unshakable because my faith is not in some esoteric or abstract idea. It's based in my own experience of the practice. So, yeah, that's really all I have. So, with that.
Dani, before we open it up
Yes,
for
teacher.
questions,
Yes, teacher.
it's interesting knowing you, from when you first came here. And I think you gave people a sense of what you were like. Definitely a challenge.
I was a challenge.
Yeah. But the autistic or artistic spectrum piece.
Yes.
That when you came here, you're very identified with.
Yes.
And tell me, can you share a little of that journey?
I wasn't going to say the A word. I wasn't even going to bring it up.
Well, I think it's
All
helpful
right.
because
Sure.
a lot of people have labels or way they label themselves. And so
Okay.
you came with that. So,
I did.
Yeah.
So I was diagnosed with autism in my late 20s. So all three of my boys have autism, all three of them, autistic. And I was diagnosed when they were diagnosed. And I got 3 opinions because I thought for sure that couldn't be right. I mean, I knew it was awkward and odd, but I don't know. I have my vision, just like everybody else has of autism, with the little boy who rocks and flaps his hands and bangs his head. But what people don't realize was that was me, and I still rock. And there were times when I had meltdowns and banged my head. So when I came here, I thought that would be a huge obstacle to my practice, this autistic brain that I was born with. But Fred very skillfully helped me to understand that it's a construct. It's a concept. And even if there are physical structures in my brain that point towards autism, which there most likely are, and my DNA very most likely, that doesn't, I can still work this mind. I can still see and have an effect on its expression in the world. And I have that's what I've been doing. I've been working with it, watching its ways and just simply changing. I mean, something Fred, he likes to ask is, what would you be, Dani, without that thought? What would you be without all that fear? Who would you be? And that was very powerful for me. I'm like, I don't know, Fred. Who would I be? I don't know. I never thought to ask. So I did. So I just started, I started really looking because I'm a scientist and I'm always curious about things. So when people challenge me, I'm like, I don't know. What would it be like? So now, and Guangu also helped last year. He really did when he was here. Guangu, oh my goodness, Guangu kind of blew things wide open for me. And a lot of the things Fred said in concert just kind of clicked. And so, I don't know, it just became very apparent to me that that is absolutely not who I am. My essential nature is not autistic. That's the construct that I was given. So, yeah. Thanks, teacher.
So we have time. Who has the? Okay. So, questions for Dani. Anything you'd like to ask her about what she said?
Don't be shy. I'm not shy, so don't be shy.
Yeah, obviously Dani's not shy.
Nope.
And online, Brent, people will chat into Brent. Okay. So in the hall, just raise your hand, and Brian will bring you the microphone. Online, just chat it in, and Brent will relay it.
Feelings that arise due to the environmental crisis and how I don't get overwhelmed. I do. Not like I used to. So sadness still arises, of course, but non-attachment. Non-attachment. I'm doing everything I can to create positive change. And that's all I can do. I'm only one person, So I acknowledge that. I acknowledge, my minuscule nature, but not in a, not in a derogative way, just in a realistic way. There's only so much I can do. And I sit with that. I sit with the sadness and I sit with the suffering, and I just let it naturally resolve itself, because it does and it will. And so it's important to acknowledge the sadness, but it's also important to let it go, because I can't, if I were to let it overwhelm me all the time, I couldn't be effective and I couldn't actually help anybody. So that's the place that I come from. And I've let it go. The planet, the ecosystems, nature, I have let it go. I have to at some point. Why not now? I'm not going to be here forever, right? This planet's not going to be here forever. So I have let it, I've accepted, and not an acceptance as in, okay, well, this sucked, but this is how it is. It's not like that. It's more of a, well, this is where we are, so what can we do? And I move on. It's to come to a place of acceptance, understanding the impermanence of all things, and just letting it go and living in that space, but still doing everything I can to help the suffering. That's how I do it.
Thank you, Dani, for that beautiful talk.
Yeah.
The word that comes in my mind right now, it's inspiration. You make me laugh, you make me cry. Like you, I was raised Catholic. I was a Catholic school. My father, very strong Catholic and all that. And also like you, I kind of like rebel against Catholicism and started looking for something else. And I also found a little book of Thich Nhat Hanh, which changed my life. I started doing research, and here found this beautiful place. And like you, I was like, is this real? Is this real? And then I got really involved. I was doing a lot of intensive for like 3 years, all that. And I really saw a change in me. It was incredible. Certain circumstances in my life, I went away from the community for a while, and I also felt a change of, I'm missing out. I'm not consistent with my practice and all that. So now I'm coming back and I hear you, and man, it's I'm really thankful.
Hey, Dani.
Hey, Dion.
I was wondering, relating to your suffering when you were younger, if it kind of like beat you down, and then like transforming it to make it like work for you and strengthen you.
Did it beat me down? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't share everything. So, yeah, I mean, I got to a point when I was in high school where I tried to commit suicide. It was in a really dumb way. I overdosed on a bottle of vitamins. I was like 13 or 14 at the time. What do you know? But anyway, yeah, it absolutely beat me down. I had a lot of people in school. I was picked on horrendously in school because we were poor. I went to school with dirty clothes sometimes, holes in my shoes. The kids knew, they just knew. And so, oh yeah, it was really, really, I went through bouts of depression and that when I was a kid. But it was interesting though. I was just a happy kid, even amidst all of that stuff. I really was. Even amidst all of that, I was quiet, introspective, but I was happy. Just being me, especially being outside. I love being outside, running around in my bare feet. So, yeah. But no, there were definite moments of despair, sure. Mm-hmm.
So how do you use like those memories and moments and like relate to it now, and did it help you transform to become like stronger
Yes, absolutely. So I did a lot of inner child work in the beginning of my practice, especially. I didn't really understand inner child and all that stuff, but it was such a beautiful practice, just going back and sitting with that stuff, going back and addressing suffering that had never really been touched on. It had been stuffed down, for sure, stuffed, but never really brought into the light of day and sat with and dealt with. So I went back in my mind and sat with little Dani, and I still do that every once in a while. I don't have to as much, but yeah, I still sit with little Dani, and that was profoundly helpful. And that suffering, I'm so grateful for it. That sounds like a silly thing to say, but it made me who I am, and it made me a compassionate person. It helped me in my activism to see other people suffering, and I don't know. I've been through the stuff, So having been through the stuff, I can help other people get through their stuff. So yeah.
We have several. Dee Dee asked, can you speak a little about your book about Buddhism and autism, and also about your YouTube channel and the passion for living beings and the environment?
Oh, all right. So I embarrassingly contributed to a book. Not embarrassingly, I'm very proud of it. So a group of autistic people from around the world who are practitioners, who are Buddhist practitioners, got together under my dear friend Chris in the UK, and he edited it, and we wrote a book. And it was to bring awareness of how this practice can help people with a mind like ours to settle it. Because a lot of the time, people with autism have trouble with fight or flight. That's my mechanism. I run. If I'm scared, or when I was a kid, I would run. And that's very true for autistic people. If we're overwhelmed sensory-wise, whatever happens to trigger at the time, we tend to run. Or my son Bradley tends to what we call turtle. He'll go into his little turtle shell. So we wrote a book to show that this practice can be profoundly helpful for people like us, but also to highlight some of the challenges that can be involved. Because social is a big deal. Communication has always been a bit of a challenge for me. If you're a very direct person, oh, I love that. If you're like no BS, just right straight to the point, then I can get behind. But if there's a little bit of like, what did you mean by that? If facial expressions are involved, or sarcasm, or there's a lot of humor I don't get, there's a lot of nuances to communication that like neurotypical people don't understand that they actually do, whereas for people like me, I have to weed through it. And a lot of the times I say the wrong thing, or I don't really understand it. So this book highlighted some of the challenges involved in Sangha, specifically with communication and just the environment in that. So it's called Autism and Buddhist Practice. That's the name of the book. And I thought it was just a beautiful collaboration of autistic people from, like I said, all over the world coming together. And yes, I have a YouTube channel. That is kind of embarrassing, actually. But because I'm not a tech person. I had to teach all this stuff to myself. And I'm certainly not a social media. I really don't feel like I fit into this society a lot because I'm very anti-technology. I could be that little old lady living in a shack in the woods with her little garden and be completely cut off, just self-sufficient. That could totally be me. No computer, no cell phone, no none of those things. I would be as happy as can be. But here we are. So I've discovered that in order to reach people, to teach them, about the environment and about the importance of native plants specifically to help wildlife and human beings, native plants specifically, I started a YouTube channel. And also I teach people how to grow their own food because the pandemic showed me that self-sufficiency can be a big benefit. So yeah, hope that answered your question, Dee Dee. It's Peaceful Bird. Okay, she's going to want to tell me want me to say what it is. It's Peaceful Bird Gardens. That's the name of my YouTube channel. Peaceful Bird Gardens. Peaceful Bird Gardens.
Beatrice asked, could you please say more about how you've worked with your physical pain?
Yeah, so I have 3 herniated discs currently as I'm sitting here. 2 just above, so my entire lumbar area is completely fused. I have like 36 rods, 18 pins and screws and the whole 9 holding it all together. My pelvis is fused to my spine, yeah. I mean, it is anyway, but they had to do some interesting handiwork to stabilize my spine. So they told me I wouldn't walk. They told me at this age I would be in a wheelchair. That's what they told me. I'm not. Thank you, yoga. But I have 2 herniated discs above that fused point, and then I have a cervical herniation. And yeah, it was either I learned to work with it or live in constant battle, and I didn't want to be in a battle. So I don't know, I just discovered through Yongey Mingya Rinpoche. He was the first person, Yongey Mingya Rinpoche, to help me realize that I could work with my pain in that way. He had anxiety and pain as a kid that he was able to resolve through his practice, and so I was like, wow, okay, well, if he can do it, you know. And he was a huge help to me. So it really is about just when the pain arises, regardless of when it is, and mine's pretty consistent, it's all the time, you just say yes to it. Yes. You know, you welcome it. But it's not like a grasping it, and you know, it's not, you don't push it away either. You just relax your body, because a lot of times we like to constrict around pain, and then all the story starts. So drop the story, relax the body, accept that this is what's going on, say yes to it, and breathe, and just be with it, and watch it, how it moves, how it ebbs, how it flows, how it does go away. And then it's back, and then, oh yeah, it's gone. But you don't get attached to any of it. You're just with it, allowing it to be there. And the more you can do that, it just becomes such a better relationship, and there's not the fight or the contention or the constricting around, and there's not the, oh my God, I'm gonna die because my back hurts, and how am I ever gonna get breakfast ready, and la 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 la. I mean, all the stories that we go into around these types of things, I think a lot of the times the story is what makes it so bad. If we can just be with what is. That's what has helped me immensely. But it's a practice, and it's a constant practice.
Dani?
Yes, ma'am. Hi.
Hi. You have this really delicious sense of humor.
Oh,
Could
I seem to think so.
Could you talk to us about that and where that came into your journey? Were you born with that too? Just talk a little bit about that.
I'm just a nerd. I mean, honestly, at the end, I don't know. I'm just a dork. I just, I don't know. Yeah, I've always kind of been this way. I always thought I was hysterical. Other people, not so much. But, yeah. I've always just kind of been this way. Just, yeah. Just not super serious. I've never been like a very serious person. So, yeah. Life's too short.
Paul asked, regarding what you said about environmental destruction, do you reflect at all about the things Buddha said related to it, that everything is impermanent and everything will eventually, or end eventually, that there has been countless universes before this one?
Oh yeah, I reflect on that quite a bit. That doesn't mean I don't think we should, throw this baby out with the bathwater and, well, the Buddha said it's just, it's not gonna last anyway, so on with the next. No, I don't think it really should be like that, so to speak. We do have to be in touch with, yeah, I mean, it is, it is impermanent. I mean, our sun is impermanent. You know, it's all impermanent, all of it. Our lives are impermanent, so that's a big deal. It is absolutely something to deeply, deeply practice with. I wake up every morning and ask myself, is this the day I'm going to die? Some people, my sister thinks it's horribly morbid. She's like, why would you do that? Well, is this the day I'm going to die? You know? Is this the day I'm going to die? It's not morbid. It's just being in touch. And so it starts, is this the day I'm going to die? And if it is, you know, how can I make it the best day? You know, how can I show up in the world in a way that makes it so that this is the best, you know, my last day here? I'm going to leave with, you know, in a positive way, you know, having made positive choices, positive effects. So, yeah, no, I definitely reflect on impermanence quite a bit in all facets and all, not just related to the earth.
You have a question.
Thank you, Dani, so much. So, when you were little and then throughout your life, this aspect that you found when you were in nature, and then when you're obviously doing work for the environment, not when you were in your head, but when you were the feeling, the connectedness that you felt. Can you explain how, I mean, that stream, is that still, yeah, can you talk about, in your words, like, how do you touch into that and know that, recognize that now from, you know, that although we've changed, there's I hear something that's been with you all along. So can you talk, maybe just, I don't know, I know it's very...
Yeah, it's hard to talk about. Yeah. Yes, my sweet friend, it's hard to talk about because there are no words, really. I don't know. I felt ever since I was a kid, whenever I was in nature, around nature, nobody ever had to explain it to me. Nobody ever had to explain anything about what was going on out there to me. There's a flow, there's an exchange, there's a relationship, it just is. And it was just very present and available to me from very, very small. And that's it is love, just pure love, just absolute pure love. And so I tried to be with it whenever I could as a kid. You know, even when my kids were babies, Brett and I, camping and anything we could do outside, we were doing outside. The ocean, we were always drawn to the ocean. So yeah, there was always just this very powerful connection for me to everything that was going on out there. And when Ty would talk about the planet and the earth, and the Buddha even talking about, you know, precious, you know, how precious Mother Earth is and just precious sentient beings are, it's just, I don't know, it just very deeply spoke to something, just beyond the construct, beyond the Dani that you see. You know, it was just something very profoundly deep. And when I was a kid, like I said, I thought it was Jesus. You give names to stuff, you know, and that was the reference point that I had, but I don't see it that way anymore. It's just, it just is. Just is. So, hope that answered. Sorry.
So thank you, Dani.
Thank you, teacher.
Yeah, so just to recap, we call this the way seeking mind talk. But I think Dani has her story about how that mind was there, surface, perhaps go underground a while, and it got covered over by all kinds of things, but somehow always kept you on course.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, that's it. And then the hope for all of us is that our way-seeking mind will become one day a way-finding mind. That's very important. you know, that if we seek because we want to find. And so, you know, it's quite wonderful for me to work with you for these past five years to really help you find that which you've been searching for your whole life. So, thank you, Dani, for your inspiring talk, for sharing your life, for sharing your Dharma, for sharing your practice. Good. So.